Thank you. And now will be time for me to welcome on stage Alessandro Greco, Head of Division at the National Cybersecurity Agency of Italy. Yes, indeed. And it will be time for you to share Italy's vision regarding cybersecurity in space.
Thank you, Margot. Good afternoon to everybody. Thank you very much to CYSAT for this very important invitation to this event. For us, it's the first time to be here. We are very happy because it's an opportunity for us as an agency, as a new agency, to present ourselves, first of all, and also to share our vision regarding the cybersecurity in a such important strategic sector. I'm Alessandro Greco. I work in the Italian Cybersecurity Agency in the Certification and Supervision Directorate, where I am the head of the division that is responsible for the security of architecture and emerging technologies. Okay. So first of all, this slide, it's useful to frame the scope of our role in Italy. Our agency was established a few years ago, so in 2021, so it's a new agency. And we are involved, we are responsible for the resilience in the cyber domain. So this is the keyword for the resilience in all the spectrum. So coming from the regulation and for the operation aspect, so support in case of incident for threat detection, threat intelligence, but also for the certification in the cybersecurity, and also, as we will see in the end of the presentation, we also support the research and the industrial initiative also in the cybersecurity domain. But of course, in this sector, there are other important actors in Italy, and we are coordinated with them, in particular for the crime prevention and contrast, for the military security and defense, for intelligence, of course, for the cyber diplomacy. So all these actors compose our architecture at national level for cybersecurity, and we are coordinated in the National Cybersecurity Cell. There is a cell when, in case of emergencies and crises, or the decisions are made. So this is our scope in terms of role. Let's go deep dive now on the space sector. But first of all, it's important to distinguish between classified and unclassified networks. So for the classified assets, the responsibility is under the Central Secrecy Office that supports our National Security Authority. So they are responsible for the accreditation of system network for equipment that process or forward classified information. So for the classified information, they are responsible. Stepping back to the unclassified network, so ACN, so we have several regulations that is applicable to the space sector. In particular, here I try to give a high-level overview of the three main regulations that are applicable to space domain. First of all, we have a national law that is very important. We call perimeter law for cyber. So in this case, here we have all the assets that are essential for national security. And we will see in a few slides how we handle that. Second, we have the NIS2. I'm sure many of you know NIS2 because it's a European law. And we transpose the NIS2 last October. So we are now in the implementation phase, and I will show how we will do that at national level. And finally, we have a third regulation that is for cloud security. So all the services that process public data, public services, have to be compliant with our cloud regulation. Since space service, space assets, many times touch cloud, we will see how we do that. And our national sectorial authority is under the presidency of Council of Ministers. So we are coordinated with them for the sector governance. So let's start now with the perimeter law for cyber. So it's a national law. It's a very important law that was established in 2019, so six years ago. And it's applicable to all the administration operators, public and private, that provide an essential function for the state or provide essential services that are essential for the civil, economic, society assets. Of course, space is one of the sectors that are in the scope because of the strategic nature. But the perimeter is not composed by organization. It's composed by assets. So once the organization is in the perimeter, they have to share information. They have to identify the assets that are critical for the specific essential, for the specific service. So the perimeter is composed by networks, IT system, that can affect the national security in case of interruption or misuse. So once an organization is inside the perimeter, they have to identify the assets that are crucial for the specific business. They have to apply measures, and they have obligation also for incident notification and for a secure procurement process that I will describe soon. SN can perform inspection and also provide sanction in case of non-compliance, where there is also an important power that is granted to the Prime Minister. He can shut down a specific ICT asset in case there is a high risk, an imminent and severe high risk for the national security. So this is the high-level overview of the regulation, but I tried to also use a graphic example in order to be more clear, to be clearer. So probably it's not so clear, sorry, but I try to describe an infrastructure that is Earth observation infrastructure, where we have the satellites, where we have the ground stations that are connected with the mission center, with the control center. And I imagine that we have also the headquarters in the left side of the operator that have the engineering branch, the HR, finance branch, and on the right, other networks that are outside the specific program. So this is a very simplified, very simplified, envisioned example of an Earth observation infrastructure. So let's imagine that now I am an operator that is inside the perimeter. How I can identify the critical asset? So I'm an operator. I'm appointed as a perimeter entity because I provide a specific service for the national security. I have to perform a business impact analysis starting from the essential function, and I have to identify all the assets that are needed to provide the specific service in terms of business. In the first step of the adoption of the law, we decide to require that they have to identify the asset that can cause the total interruption of the service, or they can perform effects that are not reversible in terms of confidentiality and integrity in case of compromission. So I perform this impact analysis with this criteria. And at the end, I understand that a small part of the network probably will be inside the perimeter, okay? This approach is gradual, so in the future we will change this criteria. But at the end of this process, the organization that is inside the perimeter have to identify the assets that are crucial, that are essential for the specific service. Then they have to share with SEN the information in terms of topology of the networks. So we define a data model, an ontology that is custom, and they have to describe the specific topology, the equipment, the asset, the process in terms of information graph. So we have node attributes, we have edge, and they share with us in a periodic way all the information about these assets. So this is the first step. Then they have to apply several security measures to the assets. In particular, the measures are derived from the Italian National Framework for Cybersecurity and Data Protection. It's an Italian framework that is inspired also to the NIST CSF, of course. So we have several measures. We talked about that today in several topics, but we can imagine, for example, in the identify step, there are measure related to the organization. So, for example, the specific entity has to identify one person that is the interface for SCN, and in order to assure an adequate level of endorsement, this person has to report directly to the executive of the company in order to assure that the endorsement for the security organization is adequate. Then there are several measures related to the protection, to the detection, to the log management, to the pen test, vulnerability, risk assessment, many measures, but in order to assure that in the entire cycle of the cybersecurity in terms of policy, technological aspect, organization are covered. The third step, the third important provision is related to the incident notification. So in case of incident, an entity that is inside the perimeter has to notify the incident if the incident was detected in one of the critical assets, and if the incident is present in the incident taxonomy that we define. The taxonomy covers both intentional and unintentional attacks. So in case of an intentional event, we have fault and failures, of course. For the intentional attacks, we use the cyber kill chain approach. And as you can see, we have also different time frame. So if the event is very important and we are at the end of the cyber kill chain, so all the attacks is completed, we have the impact in terms of confidentiality, availability. They have to notify the event within 1 hour. Otherwise, within 6 hours, and this is very important because as soon as we receive the notification, we start to support the victims in terms of incident response, but at the end, to mitigate spillover attack and also a possible lateral movement inside a specific sector, we share IOCs with all the possible organizations that are interconnected. Then, to close the loop, if I need to buy a specific equipment, a specific product that have to be installed in a critical area of the network, the entity has to notify the intention of the procurement to SCN if the product is in a list, is present in our list of critical equipment. So we have a long list of, for example, network equipment, software application, and so on. If the product is in the list, they have to notify also describing also the risk analysis that they perform, the use condition, also the process data. Using this information, we perform a technical analysis, and at the end, we can ask that the equipment is tested or not using security assessment procedures. And at the end, we can authorize or not the use of the specific equipment, giving also prescription of recommendation. So to do this job that is performed by the National Assessment and Certification Center, we have several labs that perform activities on the software component and also on the hardware component. So this is for the perimeter law. Instead, for the national transposition of EU NIS2, as I said, probably you already know NIS2, but in this slide, I will show how we transpose in Italy the NIS2 directive. So as you said, for the space, so space is one of the sectors that is also present in the NIS2 directive. In particular, the NIS2 space operator that are under NIS2 are the operator of ground infrastructure that own, manage, or operate by public or private operators, of course, that support the provision of space services. And in this definition, we don't have any telco services. We can have big, medium, enterprise according to the revenues and also on the sides of the companies. In case of big enterprise, the entity is essential, otherwise it's important. It's important because essential, important entities also means different measure, also the different depth of the measures. But in addition, the niche authority, so ACN can also identify additional operators based on also on its own criteria. In terms of timeline, as I said, last October, we finalized the national transposition, and last month in April, we defined the list of the Italian NIS2 operators, also for space, of course, and we also published the base measure that they have to adopt in the second step of the implementation, that is from today to next year, so in April 2026. And during this period, when they have to adopt the base measure, we will also define the long-term measure, so more complex measure in terms of cybersecurity, and also we will perform the categorization model that I will describe in the next slide, that will be used for the measure. At the end, from April 2026, we will have the final adoption step. As I said, so for the security measure, if we compare this slide with the perimeter one, in the perimeter, just a small part of the network was inside the perimeter. For the NIS2, instead, all the network is under the NIS2 regulation. It's a very big difference. So for the perimeter law, just the assets that are inside the perimeter are under the obligation of the perimeter law. For the NIS2, the entire network of the entity, of the operator, have to be compliant with different approach, of course. We have the principle of proportionality according to the sensitivity of the data. So this is a very initial example. We imagine this slide just a three-tier approach. So we will perform a business impact analysis according to the data that are processed in every part of the network. For the ordinary data, so the least sensitive one, they will have very basic measure. For the critical, additional measure. For the high critical, that is similar to perimeter, they will have all the measure that they have to respect. In terms of incident notification, for the NIS2, the obligation will start from the 1st of January 2026. And this is the timeline. So for a significant incident must be notified within 24 hours. But this notification can be also integrated in the 70 hours after. Last regulation, just to give you the overview, is about cloud. So we have an important regulation that is about the use of cloud solution for public data, public service. This is both for the public cloud, but also for on-premise cloud, so private cloud. Wow, why am I talking about cloud? Because I think that if we think about space solution, cloud touches this sector when we design a new space project, so the information related to the project, but also when we use operation related to the satellite, where we process the data coming from the space and so on. So cloud solution, cloud services are probably in many parts of the value chain. So it's important to understand how we handle this topic, also because before we talked about sovereign solution. Our regulation have several measures related to sovereign also measures. Also in this case, we perform an approach based on the risk. So the administration must perform a classification of the data. In case the data have an impact on the national security, the data are strategic. If the impact is on the society, it's like the NIS2 is critical, or otherwise ordinary data. And as you can see, in case we have strategic data, they have to use solutions that are at level 3 or 4, otherwise 2 for critical. What does it mean? For each level of qualification, we have many measures that are increasing. We have measures both for services and also for data centers in terms also of physical solution. For the cloud services, how you can see, we have a measure that are for security, but also for performance interoperability. If we look to security measure, in this case, our scheme, this scheme is also one of the schemes that is recognized in UCS. I don't know if you know UCS is the scheme, is the European scheme for the certification, European scheme for cloud services, together with Secnum Cloud in French, just to understand. And for data center, as I said, we have also a measure for physical security, processing, and security. Then this ends the regulation overview. But as I said, the ACN supports also incident, supports operators also at operative level for preventive and also reactive activities. So we support many operators. We have a very large constituency, both to prevent attack and also to handle attack. As you can see on the right, our visibility, of course, it's not complete. We have a visibility that is related to the notification that we receive and also to the proactive source that we have. And it's important to collaborate, as we said in the previous presentation, especially in the space sector, where many times the attacks are tailored. It's important to share information in order to share IOCs, share TTPs, and avoid the spillover attacks, spillover effect among the operators that are in the same sectors. But in addition, we also have provide important national cyber services for our constituency. In particular, we have three services. We talk about CYSAT, so incident response, but we also have the HyperSOC. There is an important project in Italy that interconnects the SOC, so the Security Operations Center in Italy. So we exchange information, we exchange events and threat intelligence. And for threat intelligence, we also have an ISAC Italy that coordinates all the activity related to information sharing for cyber. And this level is also coordinated at European level. Finally, to close the loop, we say that ACN covers the spectrum for resilience, so regulation, certification, operation, but also industrial support. This is an important activity, very important. Please consider that ACN was established 4 years ago, so we are activating all the function. This is a very important function, also to promote the activities for research and also startup promotion. So for the research, last year, ACN published the agenda for the research. So in this publication, you have all the strategic objective for research and startup. And last year, we activated 25 PhD fellowship. And in these days, we have a second round of fellowship. Then for startup, we signed 5 partnership agreements for startup incubators, accelerators. And once we receive a short list of startup, we provide non-repayable grants up to 20,000 euros. And some months ago, we closed the first loop with the I3P, that is the incubator for space, that is in Turin. It's specific for space. So on the right side, you can see the 4 startups that receive our funds for a solution that are for cybersecurity for the space. You can see one for quantum computer, the other for operating system secure for space. Mulini is for IoT monitoring for compliance, and the last one is for space service. In this case, we have GNSS, jamming, spoofing, mitigation attack. Okay. So, last slide, just to sum up the key challenges that we want to face. So we have beyond service, we have been observing these key challenges that we want to address. First of all, as we said from today, space sectors is a key target for advanced threat, is a strategic asset, both for the kind of service that they provide and also for the important investment. But we have a very wide exposed perimeter. So we have complex architecture. We have a variety, a complex technology that are used inside the network. So in this case, and especially we have many legacy problems. So before we talk about zero trust approach, this is the case. We have technologies that are custom, technologies that are commercial off the shelf. We have a variety of systems or systems that are interconnected. So there is a very big risk of lateral movement among operators. We have a big risk of spillover among different organizations. And especially, we have a high level of convergence of technology. So we talk about cloud. If we imagine a cloud operator, and inside the cloud operator, we have several space operators and other operators belonging to other sectors, is a big challenge. Also, because on this solution, we have a convergence of cloud, space, AI, and so on. So thanks a lot. I'm here because of questions.
Thank you very much, Mr. Greco. Please have a seat. Perhaps we can share a bit of your biography. So you were a former Air Force officer, and you've also worked within national government because you were at the cabinet of the Prime Minister. So you've been in cyber for a bit more than 10 years, and you began your career in space. So here you are back again, circling the loop. I wanted to ask you a question about sovereignty in data processing. What is Italy's view on that, and what solutions?
Okay. Thanks a lot for this question. Yeah, sovereign solution is one of the key topics in this period of. In our national strategy for cloud, one of the key challenges assure the autonomy for technology. So in order to assure the possible use of all the cloud solution, we define a trade-off between cloud solution and the kind of data that you have to process. So we have a heterogeneous approach. So we have the 3 tier that I described, and we have several sovereign measures that are technical level, organizational level, and also governance level. For example, the data must be localized in EU. You have to use cryptography solution. So bring your own key all to the anchor approach. And we have an important also measure that for the strategic data, for example, the cloud operator must assure that if a non-EU entity wants to access to the data that are in the cloud solution, they have to ask to the customer before. This is an important sovereign measure that sometimes doesn't allow to non-EU. So for non-EU operators, it's very difficult to be compliant with this measure. So in our public catalog, we don't have any non-EU operators that can process data for strategic level, just to be clear.
Thank you. I am not cutting you, right?
Yeah.
No, you were finished.
Yeah, no, it's
okay.
Yeah.
Thank you very much. So thank you for presenting the different layers of laws that are implied in securing cyber and applying to space. When it comes to NIS2 and its implementation, I wondered if somehow, because we know that at the European levels, there are committees and experts groups that follow the implementation.
Yeah.
How different is Italy's implementation from that of other member states of the EU?
Very interesting question. I don't have a comparison analysis among all the countries, but I know that probably Italy was one of the first member states that transposed the NIS2 regulation. I don't know if other member states that have space asset already finalized the process. But our approach is quite balanced. So anyway, try to avoid a very tough activity of regulation and compliance. But as I said, this is a balanced model to is a trade-off between the sensitivity of data and the regulation in order to avoid a crossing-cut approach, a horizontal approach for all the organizations.
Okay, and I don't want to talk too much about implementation, but when it comes to the EU Cyber Resilience Act.
Yeah, very interesting question.
You're sighing, are you?
Yeah. Because I work in the certification service, so I'm involved me personally in my division. I'm involved in the cloud services and AI solution. In particular, our agency is one, probably will be the market surveillance authorities for the AI Act. So CRA is a key topic for product, but it's strictly connected also to a CRA. So we are trying to coordinate all this regulation in order to minimize the impact. As I said, for example, our cloud national scheme is present in the draft version of EUCS. There is the certifications, European certification scheme that is under the CSA regulation, so the Cybersecurity Act. EUCS will be also used to perform the presumption of conformity for CRA. So we are trying to coordinate all this effort in order to minimize the impact for all the organizations. Yeah.
Okay, a balanced approach then.
Yeah.
Thank you very much,
Thank you.
Mr. Greco.
Bye.
You can leave the microphone here and we can give you a warm round of applause.